Outstanding Air Force man, Navigator, if I remember correctly, right, Bud?
Yes, sir.
Very important person in the air crew, weren't you?
Well, it doesn't matter with me.
Well, probably most important if we put it in the right particular here. Okay, Bud, it's yours.
I look out at this group of guys and gals, it impresses me that we're all interested in flying, and we all got here by different routes. So I thought I'd take a little time to tell you about the route that I took. Started out with December 7th, 1941. That's the day that changed all of our lives, including even those that weren't born yet, because of their parents and grandparents. I remember what I was doing that day. I was 20 years old. We'd been to church. It was on a Sunday. We'd finished our dinner, and I was laying on the living room floor reading the comics, listening to the radio, and the announcement came on that we'd been attacked at Pearl Harbor. Well, first of all, I said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" And I think I had a lot of company. We didn't know where it was, but we found out in a hurry. Another was that Japanese. Well, who are they? We could take them easy. We found out that they were well prepared. So I decided, I was a freshman at the University of Minnesota. I decided I was going to enlist because I wanted to be an aviation cadet. So I went down to the Army, down at the Federal Building in Minneapolis, told them I wanted to be an aviation cadet, and they said, "Swell, that's great. We're looking for guys like you. You got 2 years of college, of course." "What? No, I haven't." "Well, then you can't qualify." Well, I said, "Okay, I'll go over to the Navy then." So I went next door to the Navy. 2 years of college? No, well, you're out. Well, I'll try the Marines. Same story. So what did I do? I went out to Fort Snelling and joined the Army. January 9th, 1942. I remember Fort Snelling, one thing I really liked about Fort Snelling. They had terrific food. In fact, all my travels in the service, I rated them number 2. Number 1 I'll tell you about later. Oh yeah, Fort Snelling is where we took all those tests. Got shots on both sides as you walk down this aisle of 2x4s. Excuse me. And the IQ test, I remember the gentleman that was conducting the test of all these guys that were in this room said, "Now you fellas, don't dog this one. Pay attention, do your best, because the score that you get on this IQ test will follow you all through your service career." So I took that to account and did the best I could, which wasn't that good. Oh yeah, I wanted to tell you, we got the big salary of $21 per month at that time. And out of that $21 per month, you had to pay your own postage and your own laundry. Well, that all changed later on, but it took a little while. From Fort Snelling, they sent me down to Shepherd Field, Texas, Wichita Falls, for boot camp, policing the area, and more testing. They said, "Well, what do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, I think I'll be an aircraft mechanic, because it's the only way that I can get back into flying again." Okay, so I put that down. Then, after a little stay there, they sent me to Grenier Field, Manchester, New Hampshire. I was attached to a headquarters squadron. I thought, boy, isn't that great? A headquarters squadron, that sounds important. Well, I found out that a headquarters squadron for a buck private entitles you to either guard duty or KP or clerical work. Not too much of a thing for flying. So I went down to the base school and said, "Well, sign me up for mechanic school." The guy said, "Okay, come on back in a week." I went back in a week and said, "My order's here for mechanic school." "No, try another week." So this went on for 3 weeks. I finally went back there one day, and there was a different guy there. He said to me, "What are you talking about? We don't send anybody to school from this base. That guy was just pulling your leg to get rid of you." I said, "Well, what are my options?" Well, if you want to fly, your only option is to take the GED test that is the equivalent of 2 years of college. I said, well, how do you expect a guy to pass that when he's only a freshman in college? Well, he says, that's the way it is. So I took the test. Lord behold, I passed it. So that opened up the next avenue. All right, you can take the physical. And what a physical. I never had a physical like that before or since. They spent 4 hours alone on eyes. They give you the chart to read forwards, backwards, every third, and plus many other tests. Then they did the same test with a drop in each eye 3 different times. So by the time I got out of there, half the day was shot. But I passed the physical, then I went before the board. The board was very lenient, passed me all right. So then all I had to do was wait for my orders to send me to classification school, or classification center. Well, this is about March 1st of 1942. I went back, kept waiting for my orders. They didn't come. And all the rumors were that, well, this is the First Corps area. They aren't going to accept any more aviation cadets from the First Corps area. All these rumors went rampant, but that wasn't true. Finally, in August, I got my orders to go to Tennessee. And anyway, that was really a neat deal because I was not a part of a troop train. I was on my own. They gave me the vouchers and what I needed to get there. And so I ended up going to Tennessee to classification center, where they classified you as to whether you'd be a bombardier, a navigator, or a pilot. Well, you take all these tests, which were really a lot of fun. It's just like going to the fun house at the fair. But they were testing you, of course, for aptitude, for coordination, and this type of thing. Then at the bottom of the form, they had a space that said, you can check one of these squares. I want to be a pilot, I want to be a navigator, I want to be a bombardier, or I want to be what you think I'm best qualified for. Well, I checked pilot, then I checked that being very patriotic, I checked, I'll check the square where it says, I want to be what you think I'm best qualified for. Well, came qualification time, I went up to the board, I'm classified as a bombardier. Well, I found out later that everybody that checked that last square, they made a bombardier. So that was so much for that. Live and learn, I guess. Well, so I was sent to Ellington Field in Houston, and this is a place where I had the best food in the service in all the time I was there. Went through the line in the morning, and they said, how do you want your eggs? And I said, what, are you talking to me? Yes, how do you want your eggs? And then you could have ice cream for breakfast. They really pampered us. It was a nice place, but that didn't last very long. That was for pre-flight at Ellington. Went from pre-flight to Bombardier Advanced Training, which was at San Angelo, Texas. I have to tell you this about pre-flight. You guys might remember that in pre-flight, they taught you to sing while you march. You had to sing every place you went. Every school, every class you went to, you're singing. So we're all hepped up and we're all eager and set to go. We get out of pre-flight and we go to advance. We get off the train and we get off and we start to sing as we march. All of a sudden this captain bounces out from behind a barracks, and he's the assistant commandant of cadets, and he says, what the hell you fella think this is, a circus? Shut up! He lisped, and we almost got washed out right there because we laughed. But that was our entrance. I'll never forget that comical lisping as he came out and was very upset with us. Well, went through advanced training and bombardier training, graduated as a second lieutenant, serial number 0673284. I memorized those serial numbers. Now we don't need them anymore because the service uses our Social Security number. So you can forget those old numbers, fellas. But graduated as a bombardier, February 18th, 1943. And my wife today came down to see me graduate with my mother as chaperone. Those are different days. Well, I went up to the board to see where I was assigned and expected to be going into combat. About half the guys went into combat in medium-sized bombers, A-26s, 20s, that kind of thing. The other half of us went to navigation school. We thought, holy cats, at that age, you know, we were all eager to go into combat. The guys who are going to navigation school were all disappointed. But we were supposed to be the first bombardiers on B-29s. Well, when we graduated from navigation school, they didn't have any B-29s operational yet. Or if they did, there were very few. So the whole class, they made navigators. And we were made navigators, and I don't remember if we all went to the same place or not.
What class in navigation school?
That's class 43-9, class 43-3 bombardier. Graduated from navigation school, like I said, 43-9, June 24th of 1943. And that, by the way, San Marcos is where we went to. So we went to navigation school, excuse me. And we were fortunate in being the first class to enter that base. Well, if you know a new base, it was miserable. The food was so bad that even the mess officer was in the hospital. And that's honest God truth. He was there with the rest of us. I was assigned to Moses Lake, Washington for meeting the crew I was going to be on. And I was really surprised at Moses Lake, Washington. I'd spent all this time in Texas with sagebrush and sand, and dust and dirt. Got orders to go to Moses Lake, Washington, and I thought, geez, this is great. We're going to go where they grow all the apples. So we got off the train, and it was more sagebrush, sand, and desert. If you know the Moses Lake area of Washington, that's the way it is. One thing that I've never forgotten is meeting our crew. We were part of a group called Richard's Provisional Group, and there were about 37 crews involved in this. And all these crews were, when we went to meet our crews, we went to this huge building that had 37 tables in it, big enough to put a crew of 10 around. Well, I was the last one in our crew to get there. And I entered this huge hall and looked at all those tables with guys sitting around them, intimidating as all get out. So I started walking down this aisle, and our crew happened to be almost the last table on the right, and you can see all these guys looking at you as you're coming down the hall saying, keep moving, keep going, keep going. But I met our crew and had quite a long stretch of 29 missions together. From Moses Lake, Washington, we went to Geiger Field in Spokane. And the thing I remember about Geiger Field in Spokane is that they had a celestial navigation training unit there that was very similar to what link trainers were to pilots. You could get into this silo and they could duplicate any part of the world and give you, so you could take your sextant and navigate missions. They had the instruments of the aircraft there, so you could control the airspeed. And this type of thing is very effective, and I thought it was very, very well done, and that's what I remember about Geiger Field. From Geiger Field, we went to Pendleton, Oregon. And we did some phase training there, mostly out over the ocean where you could take sunshots, this kind of thing, and everybody could work on their specialty. From Pendleton, then we went to Topeka, Kansas for some more modifications and more training. And from Topeka, Kansas, we went to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey to embark by ship to who knows where. That's what they wanted us to believe. In fact, in Topeka, they issued us jungle fighting equipment. We had machetes, kits, the whole works. They were going to all these, taking all these avenues to make sure that you didn't know where you're going. Well, when we got on the ship, it was very evident that we weren't going west, we were going to go east, so they had us turn all the equipment in again. We landed in Liverpool, England, and I thought I'd tell you my impression of an Englishman before I went over there. I thought all Englishmen, don't ask me why I thought this, I don't know why, but I did. All Englishmen are fair-skinned and black hair. Well, the first English woman I saw when I got off the ship was a redhead. So that ruined my theory. This, one interesting thing, we went to Stone, Camp Stone for assignment to the bomber group we were going to be in. And as I went through the gate in the 6x6 truck with a whole bunch of other guys, here the guys on guard duty were all the guys that I knew when I was in the headquarters squadron back at Grenier Field. They were on guard duty at the gate. And I remember talking to them, and they felt sorry for me because he said, "You guys are all cannon fodder." And I felt sorry for them for such a boring job, so I guess we all were in the right positions. This was about the 1st of November of '43. We trained for 3 weeks. Then we had our first mission. It was to Bremen, Germany. We had 42 aircraft that took off, plus 2 Pathfinder aircraft. Pathfinder aircraft were those that were assigned to go with a group if the weather was expected to be all clouds. Most of us were visual crews, and so if it was bad weather, and English weather in the wintertime usually was pretty bad, what they called a Pathfinder would go with you. Pathfinders at that time were all in the same group, and the groups that needed help from the Pathfinders, they'd fly the Pathfinders in for accomplishing a mission. This first mission to Bremen was to go to the submarine pens. I remember you didn't really need a navigator to find Bremen because you could just see the black cloud up ahead from their flak. They told us that if you can get your first 5 missions in, you have a much better chance of surviving than because of decisions that might have to be made in matters of life and death are pretty fine sometimes. So they told us this and let us know that we are green, and there's no doubt about that. And we were flying over, we left the IP, we were on our way to the target, and I looked up through my navigation blister, and here's a bunch of B-17s right over us with their bomb bays open. And I thought, geez, I know I'm a rookie. That doesn't look right to me. I'm looking right up into the bomb bays of these things, and about that time their bombs came out. We were flying on the wing of one man, one crew. One of the bombs hit their left stabilizer, took that out. The other bomb hit beside the waist door, and the tail came off, and I thought of Wes when I heard this, or read this, or remember this, two people got out of the airplane, and that was a miracle that they got out. One was the navigator, the other was the radio operator. The navigator, unfortunately, got hit by flak on his way down, lost a leg, but the Germans did save his life, and he became a POW. The radio operator landed safely and became a POW. This is kind of an interesting thing happened also. A B-17 with a triangle on the rudder, painted on the rudder, and FC-2 painted on the right waist, waved around in the formation and cut the tail off of one of our aircraft. It went into a spin and no one got out of that. So here we had one mission where we had lost two airplanes with tails off. The strangely painted aircraft was believed to have been a captured B-17 employing ramming tactics to disrupt the formation. We had excellent P-47 fighter escort on this mission because it wasn't a deep penetration. 3 days later, November 29th of 1943, we went to Bremen again. The weather was poor with heavy clouds, so we climbed to 28,000 feet, and then we started to have oxygen problems. We were under a fighter attack, and all of a sudden I went to write an entryway in my log, and I couldn't move my hands. Well, I knew it was wrong. I knew that my oxygen supply had been taken away from me, and because I learned that when you lose mobility from lack of oxygen, the last thing to be affected is your brain. You lose the ability to control your limbs before you lose your ability to think. So I was sitting there and I knew what I had to do, but I couldn't do it. And I figured, well, I'll make one last effort to get up and see what I can do. And so I leaped to my feet. So I tried to grab one of my guns, but I missed it, and I fell over backwards into the catwalk that leads to the cockpit. And the pilot looked down, saw me laying down there, and so he had the engineer put a walk-around bottle on me, and I'd passed out. Once I fell over, I was still conscious, and I said my goodbyes to everybody and told the Lord to open the pearly gates, because here I come. But the next thing I noticed, I felt a sensation at the side of my head, and I was pulling on something. Well, the engineer put a walk-around bottle on me, and so I was okay. I got up, went up in the nose. The bombardier had passed out from lack of oxygen, so I checked him over for wounds. He was all right. And I hooked him up to 100% oxygen again, and it worked, and he came around. And we noticed then that there was a hole about 14 inches in diameter in the nose. While the two of us were laying flat, we'd been attacked by a fighter, or more than one fighter, and they put this hole in the nose. If we'd been in our normal positions, we would have probably both been hit. But the way it was, it turned out just right. With that hole in the nose, my maps were blowing all over the place. I tried to finally corral them, and also because we were having oxygen problems in the whole ship, the pilot decided to leave the formation and get into the clouds and get down to an altitude where we could survive. So we got into the clouds and got down to 500 feet. went across Holland, across the channel, landed at the first base we saw, and we were all okay. One thing about it, I found out that a certain phenomena occurs when you become unconscious from lack of oxygen. One is that your bladder empties. And so I got up and I was walking around, and we had all this heavy gear on. We didn't have heated suits at that time. We had all this heavy gear on, these fur-lined uniforms, and I said to one of the other guys that passed out, "Are you feeling a little soggy?" He said, "Yeah," he said, "I sure am." Well, it turned out that every one of us had the same situation, so it's a phenomena that normally occurs. We landed at this base very close to the channel, and our CO, the group, called our pilot at this base and said, "We're sending a truck over to pick you guys up because you're flying tomorrow morning." And the pilot said, "This group isn't flying any place tomorrow morning." So they said, okay. And so then we flew our airplane back to our base the next day. And I'll never forget the look on the crew chief's face as we taxied up to the revetment with a nose half off, 2 side windows and the nose blown out, tail full of holes, and he looked at it and just shook his head and said, "Can't trust you guys with anything." I'm going to skip from November of 43 now to May of 45, but of the 31 crews in the Richards Provisional Group that came to Nettishall in November of 43, only 15 remained as of February 24th. So we were taking some pretty heavy losses. In fact, as I recall, the Allies were very close to stopping daylight bombing at Christmas time of 43. The reason was that they were sustaining such heavy losses that they didn't think they were wondering if they could keep up, providing they could make the airplanes all right, but they were having trouble keeping people. When you take, and if you followed my career, I was training for more than a year. A lot of these guys got over there and went down on their first mission, and after a while that attrition starts to catch up. But along came the P-51, and Bob Jorgensen over here knows, and that saved our bacon. P-51, because of its performance and range, made the difference in giving us fighter protection that we needed. You know, when they first came out with the B-17, it was supposed to be the airplane that didn't need fighter protection. It had so many guns and it was so fast that we laugh now, but that's what they thought. It was because they were comparing it to a P-26. Well, when they got over there and saw and found out they were flying against ME-109s and FW-190s, it made a different ballgame. And so that theory got shot down in a hurry. We became a lead crew in January of 44. And I thought it was kind of interesting how they picked lead crews. I didn't know, I thought maybe they had some exotic method. They didn't really. They picked our lead crew. We had a good pilot. He was a former football player for Oregon State. He was good, and he was a good commander. So they decided that they were going to make him a lead crew. First thing I knew, the squadron navigator came up to me one day and said, "Bud, let's take a bike ride." Well, he's a captain and I'm a second lieutenant, so I'm going to say, "Fine, let's take a bike ride." And we rode out a ways, and he said, "Let's stop here." We stopped there, and he said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "We're going to make your crew a lead crew, and we're going to replace the bombardier. And of course, the co-pilot won't be very happy because he'll be displaced. And as far as the navigator is concerned, we've been looking at your records, and we think you can handle it if you want to do it. Remember, you'll only be flying one mission out of 4. Your tour will be delayed quite a long time." But I thought, well, give it a try. So that's how I became a member of a lead crew. One story about our pilot, I should digress a little bit. When we first got over there, he thought, well, if I get to the end of the runway, I want to have enough flying speed so if something happens to one of the engines, I can still get it into the air with a full bomb load and a full gas load. Well, so we'd go charging down the runway, and he'd hold it right down the runway till we were up to 130, 135 miles an hour, and then he'd jerk it into the air. And the operations officer called him in and said, "Say, Bill, I've noticed that you're keeping her on the runway a long time and getting that airspeed way up." He said, "Yeah, I want a little cushion in case something happens." He said, "Well, did you ever stop to think about the load on those tires? With that full bomb load and gas load when you're bounding down the freeway, down the runway?" And so from then on, he took it off at about 100 like everybody else. We flew our 24th mission on May 12th of '44 to Brux, Czechoslovakia. The 388th bomb group put up 2 groups, A and B. Our crew led the B group. Our target was a synthetic oil refinery at Brux in western Czechoslovakia, which was a deep penetration. The weather was perfect. Our formation was formed and we made all the course good and all the control points good. And, talking about control points, we had these control points along our route where we were supposed to be picked up by different groups of fighters. And I always wondered, geez, we have a crew member who does nothing but navigate. How do these fighter pilots know how to hit these control points on time and on course? So I asked Bob about it. Bob said, "Well, that's easy. We just hit the bomber stream and slide along the bomber stream till we find the group we're looking for." Is that right, Bob? Okay. So any method that works, works. Well, this mission to Brux, I had the course drawn out, and it was very evident that there's just nothing to navigate by out in western Czechoslovakia. In fact, it reminded me, in watching movies of the Holocaust, and the way these people were transported on railroads into Poland and some of these places for these camps, that it was the same kind of terrain. And I noticed that on this terrain there was one single track railroad in the neighborhood of where we wanted to go. So I said to myself, well, that's the baby I'm going to look for. And if I find that, I'm not taking my eyes off it because it's the best thing to navigate by. Well, we got north of Frankfurt. I looked out to the right and I saw about another bomb group out there. I thought, what in the world are they doing off course like that? Well, it wasn't that they were off course. It was that it was 75 ME-109s and FW-190s. And they went en masse way up ahead, picked up on the wings ahead of us, and there were airplanes going down all over the sky. I never saw anything like it before or since. pieces of airplanes were flying by us. In fact, one airplane, it pulled out of formation. The crew came and bailed out, left it on an automatic pilot, and the airplane started to make a slow 180, and it didn't lose any altitude. It was right on our altitude level. Started to make this 180, finished the 180, and came right at our formation. Well, I was down with my hand on the escape hatch handle, trying to lean up to see what was going on, and hold on to that handle at the same time, and waiting for the pilot to say, "Bail out, you guys." No word came. So I looked at that airplane coming at us again, and I thought, I don't want to jump out. Geez, I'd feel ridiculous. I'm floating down and they're all going merrily on their way and nothing happened. But slowly I could see one wing start to dip. And just before it got to us, it dipped and went all the way down. But I remember that as being a very trying time. Ray, when he spoke, talked about his legs shaking on takeoff. And I had the same thing happen to me as I was looking out the nose, and this ME-109 was coming into us with his guns blinking, and so your body is tense just waiting to be hit. And how he missed us, I don't know. He might have hit somebody else, but he didn't hit us. And then he split us down, and away he went. One other point I'd like to make is that I never thought this could happen, but it did. After we'd dropped our bombs, oh, and by the way, the A group missed the target. We're the B group, our bombardier hit it. Hit it real well. And we were glad because I hate to have that many aircraft involved in that kind of battling, get to the target and find out that nobody hit it. So that worked out real well. And I remember on the bomb run, I gave the pilot a heading of 0 degrees after we'd flown into this, up this railroad for a while. And I didn't see anything happening. Didn't see the target ahead. I thought, gee, couldn't have missed this. All of a sudden, bingo, it was just like somebody rolled up the shade. There was his target. And the bombardier hit it, even though we lost the automatic pilot on the bomb run, and the airplane lurched in the air, and the bombardier just said 2 words. He just said, "PDI, Bill," and Bill got on the pilot direction indicator manually, and the bombardier caged his gyros, got things working again, and still managed to hit the target, so he did a good job. After we turned off the IP, we were hit by a bunch of, well, in the bomb run, I could look down. We were flying at 22,000 feet. I could look down and see German ME-210s taking off runways, or airfields down there below us. And about an hour later, they were up to our altitude and they were sitting back and peppering 20-millimeter shells at us, and our co-pilot was riding in the tail as a formation officer. And I remember him saying, "Well, better turn her to the left, Bill, a little bit." We move her to the left and off the right, poof, 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 poof. And so they didn't hit us, but one of them came. I was standing in the nose looking out this window to the right to about 2 o'clock, and this ME-210 came diving down right underneath our airplane. And as he passed, I was looking at him and he was looking at me, and our eyes locked. I can't explain it because the closure must have been 500, 550 miles an hour. And yet our eyes were locked for a split second as he went past me. And I didn't think that could happen, but it did. We had a system. We lost 2 aircraft that day, but the other wings lost about 30. But we had a system in our crew where if the gunners thought they shot down a plane, they were to call me right away, and I'd write down the time, and I'd write down the coordinates where we were when this happened, and then at the critique, we'd turn that in and say we think that our guy shot an airplane down, and you know, that's a very hard job to do, to give credit for a fighter when 30 guys are claiming the same fighter. And that's why it was hard for the different bomb groups to give out information as to how many airplanes were shot down. But by turning in the coordinates and the time to the critiquing officer, then they could take that and they could assign who they thought shot the 8 airplanes down. Our crew got credit for 2 that day, and so they were happy about that. I think that's not the end of my career, but I think that's as far as we'll go. I think I'm going to put too many people to sleep otherwise.
There was an honest man. They only shot down 2 that mission. I always maintained that in the records, if you ever